Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. The topic of today's discussion is the impact of COVID-19 on water resources and new opportunities. A tiny virus originated in Wuhan has kept most part of the world under lockdown in just a few months. This is surely telling us the power of a virus is a particle of a few tens to hundreds of nanometers in diameter, typically an object of several megadalton in mass. 1 dalton is roughly the mass of 1 hydrogen atom. Thus, a virus is a few million times heavier than a hydrogen atom, but it is still a particle. Much, much smaller than what we can see even with a microscope. But one thing is clear, even very tiny objects can be of concern, such as water. Water is just 18 daltons in mass, just about 3 angstroms in diameter, over 1600 times smaller in size than the virus we are concerned with today. All of us will be affected by a water crisis if we continue as usual. Going further, we are affected by molecules of similar kinds, such as carbon dioxide and oxygen. Remember that we threatened a small molecule, such as ozone, just a few years ago, and it took a long time for us to repair it. Unfortunately, the challenges faced today to small molecules, I mean the invisibles, are too many. However, these challenges can also present new opportunities. World is going to be increasingly digital. Digital supply chain to online courses, the opportunities are endless. Shifting manufacturing base and apps to sell liquor. There are many, many developments already. What does COVID offer apart from all these? There will be new opportunities for water saving. Should you use the same amount of water in these difficult times when disinfection becomes a daily or even hourly routine? New opportunities for on-site water production without the fear of infection during production, transport, and use will become important. There will be new opportunities for sensing. Can we measure chemical, heavy metal, and microbial impurities in water bottle, in any water bottle, affordably? Can we have on-site affordable recycling, delivering quality tap water? Are there new detergents with reduced environmental footprint? Can we have disinfection without soaps, detergents, and such other things? Can we disinfect just with sunlight? There are very many such opportunities, and we will address some of them. On a few, we have come up with products as well. On today's symposium, we have now about 415 strong network of people concerned about water. If some of you come up with new ideas and products to make the world safer, the symposium would have served its purpose. We have an exceptionally talented pool of speakers and excellent panelists. In fact, the best we can assemble. The collective experience of people on this panel put together runs to something like 200 man-years. I'm particularly happy that Shri R.C. Panda, Chairman of the Task Force of Jal Jeevan Mission, is part of our symposium. All the speakers here are committed to water. They spend their life on this molecule. I'm also happy that some of the young entrepreneurs who believe in new opportunities water can offer are on the panel. I will keep my talk short, as I would like to have time to take as many questions as possible, especially from the young. This conference is organized by ICCW, the International Center for Clean Water. It's an initiative of IIT Madras to ensure that the world is water secure. ICCW is a place where anyone can come and build a water technology from scratch and implement it in the field. Please visit us if you come to Chennai or visit us virtually. The symposium series was inaugurated on May 7th, 2020 by Mr. Parameswaran Iyer, Secretary of the Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation. For the benefit of all of you, we have kept live streaming of the event in YouTube so that more people can participate. Please enjoy your time with productive engagement. Thank you very much.
It is a very interesting and very educative virtual conference, a series that has been organized by the ICCW. And therefore our thanks go to Professor Pradeep and Professor Sripati, who have been the kingpins in the organizing this seminar. As you know, the strategy for this webinar series have been two-pronged. And these two-pronged, on one side is the water conservation through effective detergents and chemicals for efficient disinfection. The second is the environmental impacts of wastewater generation and opportunities, and this in the backdrop of the coronavirus pandemic. What is the coronavirus pandemic is known to one and all. But let us remember that there has been no epidemic nor any war in the world where more than 100,000 people have died. And today the death is something like 3,57,480. And numbers affected from the coronavirus world over is roughly 5,080,000. So it's a very mind-boggling problem, and Professor Pradeep, you have taken the right step to organize this series seminar. Let me mention that we have the two types of problems which are coming. One, to manage the challenges that is coming and therefore to protect ourselves. And while protecting ourselves, there is enormous impact on water resources. When I say water resources, you must know that if in a village 40 liters per capita per day was sufficient, today in the same village you will be needing roughly about 75 liters per capita per day. Why? Because we want that there should be a hand washing. And hand washing, bathing must be as frequently as possible to ensure that you are protected. The water quality is getting contaminated and service delivery is getting affected because of the limited systems which have been in position. And therefore the effectiveness of disinfection in drinking water purification and supply gets also a great challenge in this regard. Because our water treatment plants, water purification units have been all designed to a particular level. And the moment there is a demand, though we may get water from the sources, but systems will not be in a position to cover. The cost-effective technologies here will be able to help us in proper purification, opportunities for water treatment and investment in infrastructure. Here the private sector would play a very, very vital role. The capacity building of the locals is very essential. 4 group of people I have catalogued here, where the capacity building in the backdrop of coronavirus pandemic is necessary. One is officials, engineers, managers, supervisors, operators of all the water and water related systems. Then the second is the local self-governments, Panchayat Raj institutions, urban local bodies, village water and sanitation committees, self-help groups, NGOs, CBOs, all these non-government organizations and the PRIs would need the training and capacity upgradation. School children need to be given information, communication, and education. And the third, and not the least, is the communities and the village leaders who have to be educated as to how they should conserve water, how the local purification, local management of the water resources should be done. In this context, I would say that the Jal Jeevan Mission launched by Honorable Prime Minister last year on the Independence Day, from the ramparts of the Red Fort, he announced that by 2024 there should be every house to have a functional tap connection. Though the funds have been already earmarked to the tune of 3,50,000 crores, but the funds may be more or less, we do not know. This task force which I am heading at present is working on the modalities, the methodologies, and the challenges which will be faced in getting the Jal Jeevan Mission implemented. The whole ministry is doing. We are a 14-member team, and this 14-member team drawn from all sides of professionals are looking after this. Therefore, I would say that the speakers, when you come to the point of really discussing in this webinar, you should concentrate on how prepared is the Indian industry, the post-COVID, on emerging water challenges. In the post-COVID water challenges, you must know a very interesting thing. I came to know from my daughter and son-in-law who are working in US, and they are doctors. They are treating the patients there, and they say all the dead bodies are being buried. If all the dead bodies for certain communities are buried, where are they buried? Are they buried near a water source? Are they buried near a aquifer? Then in that case, there will be contamination. This will be a greater challenge. And therefore, the emerging challenges due to the COVID-19 will be enormous, and to fathom it, all the technologists must come forward. The next is emerging models of addressing water utility challenges, and in this regard, you should look into the strategy, steps, and cost benefits. Approaches used in Europe and Germany with regard to water resource management, drinking water facilities, the e-technology, the IoT, and the SCADA, and so many other technologies which are being used, so that the systems will not be handled by the human beings, but by the machines with the technologies. The opportunities for startups, therefore the youngsters who have joined this webinar, they must know that the opportunities for the startups are many. For example, Amrit of ICCW is already available. Please see, in case of the contaminated waters with the fluorosis or arsenic, these are all the necessary technologies which will be useful. And therefore the opportunities for new startups are already available. The last but not the least is the alternative strategies and the strategies for sustainable water management practices in respective buildings. How we use the minimum water but get maximum benefits in protecting ourselves. And therefore the researchers, professionals, engineers, technologists, all of us must really come together and bring out the new ideas to face this mind-boggling pandemic that has been facing us. Thank you.
Thank you, Shri Panda, for your excellent inaugural remarks and the inaugural comments on the several strategies and opportunities that are right in front of us at this point of time. And I thank you once again for keeping up the time as well.
And my topic today is how prepared is the Indian industry, like what Mr. Panda said. Just to recall, we should say what was our state pre-COVID. For want of a better thing to do, I would look at the industry in three buckets. One is water for public consumption, which means all the utilities, the water and the wastewater treatment plants, either owned by the government or the municipalities or privately owned. Then water for industry, where water treatment industries come in, both water and effluent treatment, and as well as sewage, and recovery of, especially in industries like textiles, recovery of salt, etc., which is becoming a big business now. And water for agriculture, which basically is irrigation and water pumping, predominantly groundwater, because India is the largest drawer of groundwater. Now, if you look at utilities, it's been a mixed performance. Not all cities and towns have access to water. And if they do, not many of them are 24/7. And on average, about maybe 40% of the sewage is being treated in big cities. And if you go down to small towns, it's probably as low as 7 to 10%, hardly any recycling. If you look at industry, water treatment industries are doing well, although it's now almost a cottage industry. Anybody who knows a bit about water treatment is able to buy components and put it together. But having said that, there are also large companies which are doing quite well due to the poor availability and quality of water that is there in India today. The only threat for them is that if the water quality becomes very, very good, then we have an issue. If you go to irrigation and groundwater, agriculture is the most profligate user, accounting for more than 80% of India's water consumption. This is the situation that we have been in. Now, what did COVID do? COVID has impacted all these sectors, and the industries connected with them in very different ways. Some positive and some negative in the medium long run, but in the short term, all sectors are getting impacted negatively. Basically, if you see under the complete lockdown, less than a quarter of India's 2.8 trillion economy was functional. If you look at businesses, up to 53% of the businesses in the country were projected to be significantly affected. Supply chains were under stress, severe lack of clarity in what is essential and what is not. And we have been facing shortages of water in many parts of India, and not because we lack water, but we lack infrastructure due to improper planning, and we have unchecked water pollution. So even that water that we have is becoming very, very polluted. The Niti Aayog said 21 major cities will completely run out of groundwater by 2020, and many people will get affected. But due to lack of time, I'm not going to go all that. But one thing, let me say, just as Mr. Panda said, now with all people trying to wash their hands 10 times a day, we expect that at least 20 to 25% increase in water demand, and the generation of wastewater from human settlements will also increase. So this is an issue that we need to look at, and the governments need to focus on long-term planning, and all stakeholders, in fact, have to focus on long-term planning and coordinated responses, and not to work in silos. The problem facing many cities that usually we have warning signs, but it's ignored by the stakeholders, either due to a lack of political will or a lack of a sense of urgency or lack of knowledge. As a panacea to all the COVID issues, now our PM has called for an Atmanirbhar Bharat. Now, what is this going to do for us? The Indian industry is all gearing up to restart operations with hope and confidence that the domestic demand will rise and it will stabilize and we will restart the growth engine in a period of 4 to 6 months. But I personally feel it will be much longer, perhaps 6 months to a year at best. So having recognized what we are going to do and recognizing the potential that India has in terms of international investment in sectors like water, mining, healthcare, pharma, etc., COVID will see many changes, especially the water industry. First thing is increased remote working. Communication and networking will be remote, increased digitalization and automation. It's kind of a watershed moment for digital transformation of the water sector. Less travel, new methods of business and client engagement, optimizing resilience and efficiency, and increased risk tolerance from the water sector. We've always been risk averse in the water sector. Improved technology and innovation, and a more significant role to ensure public health. That means stricter quality norms, because bad water can actually sort of even make other viruses spread far and wide. So from a reactive role, we have to go into a proactive role. And this is basically what we need to do. And this brings us back to the concern of our self-reliant economy. Our nation's strength, among others, is our youth, but then we need to ensure that we get the demographic dividend by right skilling them. And the COVID has made sure that whatever we learned or whatever we've been learning in terms of skilling, we need to change and need to skill and reskill people in each sector based on the few points that I spoke about, because a lot of jobs will disappear and many other jobs will be coming up. So human capital development is vital. We have some opportunities, we have challenges ahead. Demand supply linkages may have to be redrawn completely, even in the water sector, as migrant workers which we used may not come back. So a lot of automation has to be done, a lot of remote management has to be done. There's a distinct need for availability of skilled manpower, which is differently skilled for leveraging and managing the infrastructure, which is advanced technology. We need to have a thrust on skilling these people. And as far as manufacturing industry goes in the water sector, Industry 4 with more automation and robotics, IoT in terms of users, again, remote management, IoT, less people in operation and maintenance, lesser jobs, but then we need to sort of handle reliable equipment and ensure that these work well. So restricted availability of water, that is another thing that would happen. And norms on specific water consumption might come up, leading and ensuring that we use water multiple times. Reduce and recycle is vital now for the water industry. And stringent norms, I already spoke about quality of water, and perhaps it will lead to higher penalties on polluters. So this is vital change, and change in business models is nothing that I'm looking at because funding patterns will change, business models will change, and perhaps water as a service will pick up speed. And as companies start increasing focus on reducing capital expenditure and fixed costs, and they would rather have variable costs. So this would sort of mean change business models. Finally, agriculture becoming smart. With smart agriculture, we have to increase the quantum of what you call agricultural produce to feed more people, but with less water. And as agriculture uses 80% of fresh water, it's very, very vital that we need to scale up investments for water efficient irrigation. So we see that current water practices in Indian cities focus on supply side and think of hard solutions as hardware solutions, but this approach has to be changed, and we need more feasible demand side management. So we need to be proactive and be fast, contain by isolating the bad from the good. Don't throw good money over bad money. We need to make changes, and we need to build capabilities before such events occur. So trauma management capabilities before the trauma hits you, as they call. So I think with this, I will stop because my time is up more or less, and perhaps take questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rangnath, for the encouraging words that you have given for us from the industry perspective.
I'm happy to contribute to this webinar, and my heart belongs to India for many years now already. I come to India as tourist and as a consultant and researcher for 25 years now, meanwhile. So I'm familiar with the situation in India, and I would like to share a few of the insights which we gained during our work, and also how that could impact on the situation in India. Shri Parameswaran, could you start with the slides, please? So my talk, and I will try to keep it brief, will be on the experiences from Germany and Europe, particularly in water cycle management. And by using this word, it should already indicate the direction of the inspiration I would like to give you. So our experience in Europe, and you can switch to the next slide, is that we would need in India as well a kind of integrated approach to manage the whole water cycle. In Europe, this approach has been implemented around 25 years ago after a long discussion about how to manage water resources in future. And at that point, the climate change and the global change impacts were not on the horizon, but we were already seeing that the nature was deteriorated through industrial activities, and that the quality across Europe and the different member states was quite diverse. So after a long discussion, the Water Framework Directive was introduced. And the Water Framework Directive is the umbrella legislation which applies the principle of integrated water resources management on a basin scale managing the water sources in the groundwater, in surface water, in lakes, and also in coastal areas. So it's a kind of integrated approach. And under this Water Framework Directive, we have a series of key elements in our directives and regulations. The most prominent one is, of course, the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, which has been in place already 30 years ago. But also the Drinking Water Directive is a very prominent piece of legislation. And now in the revised version, it comes with the approach of water safety planning, which is, let's say, the state-of-the-art approach where we try to address the most pressing issues in terms of acute, but also chronic toxicity and how to safeguard safe water supply, and in the future probably also safe wastewater and water reuse management across the different applications and sectors. There are a couple of other directives which cover other important issues like industrial emissions, like nitrates, which mainly come from agriculture, but also the Bathing Water Directive is important because that allows people to use the surface water bodies for recreational and other uses. Please go to the next slide. Please, the next slide, Sripati. Yes. So if we look at water quality issues, corona and the viruses as such are not a new topic. We traditionally look at chemical contaminants as well as microbial contaminants. And microbial contaminants, and coronavirus is a prominent example now, but viruses have been an issue in water for decades and have been originally also one of the factors why advanced wastewater and water management has been introduced. The problem with viruses is that their infectious dose is very low. So often a few viruses can already be sufficient to spark an infection, and also the mortality potential traditionally is really high. So we've seen that also across the globe now with the pandemic. Bacteria, protozoa, and helminths are other important pathogens which we try to handle, and they are also addressed in this water safety planning approach. So I would advise also to apply this approach in the future. We call that a quantitative microbial risk assessment, and based on the risk assessment, we normally do then a risk management approach. The chemical contaminants are also important, but most of them, they don't pose an acute risk, they pose more a chronic risk. Go please to the next slide. If we look at the Indian situation, and the speaker before has highlighted to which degree wastewater treatment is already applied in India. So if you go to the big metropolitan areas, we meanwhile might reach 40% of wastewater treatment. In small villages, this is applied to a far lesser degree, but wastewater treatment is really important because this is the starting point for any advanced management of the water cycle, and particularly also with regard to risk management and control of the health risk by any emerging contaminant. So we see here in Europe, meanwhile, the compliance with the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive is really high. Also with the new member states, they are rising. This regards to the wastewater collection, but also to the wastewater treatment degree, and we are approaching 100% across Europe, slowly but surely. Next slide, please. I've been heading a group of the European Commission and expert team looking into emerging pollutants, particularly also with regard to trace organics and microbial hazards. And there's a range of compounds. So we not only talk about corona, we talk about trace organic pollutants, we talk about microbial hazards beyond viruses, we talk about microplastic, and we particularly also talk about antibiotic resistance genes and bacteria, which is proliferated and which is also challenging our health systems increasingly by resistance genes. So we look normally at the point sources like wastewater treatment plant or maybe sewer overflows, but We also struggle a lot in Europe with the diffuse sources from surface runoffs, roof runoffs, aerosols, etc. Please do the next slide. This also is my last slide. I don't want to go too much into detail about technologies, but maybe some main principles which we apply in water cycle management, and particularly water reclamation, because most of the water is used more than once. So in that sense, we have to apply a series of barriers which should safeguard sufficient removal of critical contaminants, and we call that principle a multi-barrier principle. In this application of the multi-barrier principle, we normally use combinations of natural and engineered systems. So a wastewater treatment plant can be followed by a natural system for polishing, like a wetland, or we can use soil aquifer treatment to recharge the water to the groundwater, to refill the groundwater sources. And this has been applied also in an earlier project between Europe and India. We called that project Safpani. And Safpani also involved the Anna University from Madras, for instance, or Chennai, sorry, to use the old word, to address this also in the Indian context. We are trying to tackle diffuse and point sources in these applications, and it is also applicable for decentralized treatment. So I want to highlight that. One important part, and this is also important particularly with your future directions in management, is sufficient knowledge of the qualities and availability of the data to researchers, to the public, to safeguard that let's say the confidence and the trust in the quality of the water supplied at the tap, but also for irrigation and other points, is sufficiently available. With this, I would like to finish my presentation. I hope I kept the time. This is a picture I took a couple of days ago in Düsseldorf while walking on the River Rhine. This ship just passed by, and I saw it as a divine indication of where we have to go in the future. So keep our rivers clean. That would be the motto to safeguard the health of the public and the environment.
Respected Chairman, ICCW, other panel members and participants, my greetings to you. I've been a utility practitioner, and I would like to speak with respect to what are the challenges and opportunities in the utility. How secure is your city's water supply, especially? How is the pandemic affecting our basic ecosystem? And how much regulation will play a very important role? And as you could see, force majeure conditions are being applied across the country. So my discussion points in these 5-10 minutes would be a short overview, challenges, key interventions, and some new models. Next slide. See, we already having water utility as such in India is a state-run subject, and they are not used to any accountability at all on the distribution management. It's a very, very big call. Already it's a very high increased pressure from almost all the people, whether it's quality, reliability, sustainability. And today the donors are not going to come in, and the social demands are extremely important. So I see that it's a very, very big activity. Unfortunately, in this new SOPs that were given, 20 lakh crore of investment, I saw that every country, every small country in the world is put some allocation towards COVID funds for water. Unfortunately, I don't see it in India. It's a very important public sector which is handled primarily by the state governments, and it is really required to run an efficient utility itself. Next slide, please. You know the challenges very well. You need ubiquitous clean water. Our system says that 135 LPCD per consumer daily and things like that. And the panchayat or a smaller level villages would have 80 or 75. But today it has been proved in the world in these 60 days, hand washing is the cheapest and the best defense against infection. For us in India, continuous water supply, even though Jal Jeevan has been announced, but still it's a very distant dream. How are you going to cope up against this? It's a very big challenge. Reliable piped water. You all live in Chennai and other parts of this country. You all know how many hours of water we get. Do we get it in quality? This is the prerequisite for quarantining itself and social distancing. It's very important. So the reliability is going to be, I see a very big role by regulators now coming in. And also, instead of just copying what the WHO gives us, why don't we form a Clean Water Act in India itself, suiting to each and every state requirements or each and every our requirements, because of the sustainability of the sources that we have, the type of water, that source that we have, whether groundwater or surface water or desalinated water, all these things are quite different. And so we need to have a clear act itself. And I see a very, very big opportunity here. And secondly, you know the conditions now. 4 states contributed to the enormous infrastructure building in the water sector. It's only UP, Bengal, and we need still depend on those laborers to help run our plants efficiently. It is them. That's the difference between India and rest of the countries. Even poorer countries like Manila, Phnom Penh, all of them have trained enormous capacity at the local level. Today, you need to run these plants. You're not going to wait for the Bihar workers to come and build facilities for you and run this. So you need to do a lot of skilling. Our schools to be very practical. They have to teach these things in IITs or polytechnics and everything. Otherwise, we are preparing ourselves for a big disaster. And very important, nobody has got the money. Today, industry, primarily, industry is subsidizing the domestic because we don't have volumetric billing. We don't have any demand management, as Ranganath told a few minutes back. So innovative contract structure, which will be very well funded by private finance, is going to come in. And these are all very much bankable. And that's why we are saying this pandemic has really opened a lot of ideas, especially water for all, which Mr. Panda talked about. So we needed a regulator, sir. We need to have something like any simple countries, like even in South Africa or FAT, how to penalize the utilities and service contractors if they fail to meet targets. That's a very important and a challenging thing which you should ask. Because there's nothing called as a KPI right now on the distribution management. What exists is only on paper. Next slide. So we do not have, across the world, I've been there in the industry for 35 years, having worked outside as well as in India, we don't have something called as a utility in India. We call it a ULB, we call it a panchayat, we call it a blocks and things like that. We have a very weak structure. We're not able to handle this pandemic. The next wave of it, if it happens, it will be very difficult to handle it. Operating cost recoveries we know is very low. Service levels are extremely poor and low commercial efficiency. Absolutely. And poorer countries have got better commercial efficiencies and asset condition is unknown. There is no quantification of non-revenue water at all. All of us know about 45 to 50% of our water is lost right from the source that we take to the distribution to the last mile connection. Poor hydraulic designs, where the population would be, divided responsibility between different stakeholders is also adding to the pressure. So different countries, next slide please, have adopted different things. For example, in China, post-COVID, they're actually gone for a heavy digitization. You see the number of tenders. I am actually going through across what each and every country around the world is doing on the water side after the post-COVID or during the COVID. And it is very clearly on the utility side, each one has got a separate niche. China is going towards digitization, AMI, automatic meter reading, because they feel social distancing interest. The reliability is very important. Most of them are in home quarantine. And you'll be surprised to know Indian pharma industry has got a big growth in this COVID. We have become the world leading bulk drug suppliers in the world, to the entire world. And you know, India has announced a number of CETPs because they produce hazardous effluent. My company, we do a lot with effluent management, and I know that CETPs, combined effluent treatment plants, never work except Tamil Nadu, which has got the maximum number of combined effluent, and some private industries around in India. Today, that point has come very seriously. How do you handle the effluent management is a very important thing. So my strategy would be to really have a strategy on the ground level for India, wherein we actually need to have a proper baseline. We need to have a Clean Water Act. We need to bring in the regulation, and we need to bring in innovating post-COVID thing to integrate every aspect of finance, engineering and operations, because the rules of the game has totally changed. All these ULBs are already bankrupt. They are already more bankrupt now because the consumers not pay. So we need to get into quantification, and how our water authorities react is a very important thing in this whole exercise. So the risk management plays a very important thing, and rethinking the capital first approach to water, building big institutions, big WTPs, STPs doesn't solve our problem. Handle it at the distribution level. The end consumer is facing that problem of water quality, reliability of water supply. Next slide, please. So as I said, you can go to the next slide. We need to have the baseline and ready. Next slide. So we need to have an effective utility management. How we do it? We can do it as India. We have excellent manpower. We have very good trained people. But we have devolved all these things to people from outside the states to do it. So today, local management plays a very important role in this. And that is why we said effective utility management, which is actually the pyramid of merging with both your institutional strengthening as well as the distribution, is the most important thing. Next slide, sir. So continuous water supply, as Ranganath said, is the need of the hour. Jal Jeevan talks about it, but we are nowhere close to it. So we need to really look at it from accessibility, bankable financial projects, which are self-reliant. And that's why I say non-revenue water projects is something India can go whole hog. It can be localized to every single panchayat. You know, Kerala is a standing example. They don't believe in the utility water boards to supply them water. Every panchayat handles it independently, and they're all world-class. They supply 24/7 water, pure water, and it is the shining example. Every NGO has studied this model. So that's very important. The last slide, sir. Mr. Deepthi, I lost you. Last slide. So I would end it here because I think the newer models that will come in will be with the KPI driven, key performance indicators, ability to deliver against performance metrics is a very important thing. And I think there is an enormous opportunity in water. As water engineers, all of us can contribute a lot in this. Thank you so much.
Greetings to all the panelists and audience. What I'm going to talk about is what are the opportunities for startups in mitigating future water challenges. What I'll talk about is in three parts. First is talk about what is really driving the opportunity for startups in the water sector. The second part I'll talk about is which areas in the water sector are really startups having an opportunity, seeing an opportunity, are they likely to change, and you know, where are they really active. And the third part of my talk really would look at what needs to get done in an environment and policy side. I think some of them have been referred to by earlier speakers, which will then make the startups more effective, more vibrant. So what really drives startups? You know, startups are very highly vibrant and entrepreneurial organizations. They really start with passion, with entrepreneurs wanting to make a dent in the universe. They're really fired up by the grand challenges, and water sector really offers them a key challenge in multiple ways. But if you really look at every industry that has startups in them, and very many industries have these. Every industry is a little different. So if you look at the internet sector or the digital sector or the e-commerce sector, what is really driving startups here is the fact that these are very recent. They started from ground zero. And you know, you have within India, you have 1 billion people, consumers. Globally, you have 5 or 7 billion people. So it's the number of users that's really driving these startups in the internet sector, for example. If you look at the automobile sector, it's really the fact it's a 100-year-old industry, the IC engines. But IC engines is giving way to electrification. You have the ride-share economy. You have autonomous driving. So these 3 or 4 drivers are changing and are getting disruption into the sector, and you have startups that are focusing there. When you look at water, it's very different from these kind of industries. Water has been there forever. As long as life has been here on Earth, you have had water, and it will probably be that way. So the real driver of water is not what other sectors have, but it's really coming from the point of view of the fact that the sector is under stress. Whether it's developed nations or whether it's a country like ours, whether it's a pandemic situation like we are in today, or even whether it's not, even in the pre-pandemic days, you had a lot of stress. The stress is coming from 2 areas or two big reasons. One, the fact that people don't have enough access to water, to good quality water. Human beings don't have access to potable water as much as they should. We don't have access for other non-potable uses. Industries are finding it short. Agricultural sectors are heavily dependent on rain-fed areas. So generally you find that water is a shortage sector for pretty much every consumer that you're looking for. The second area, second driver for water sector for startups really is the fact that the environment is getting damaged. Because fresh water is there's not enough of water that can be made. In fact, there's no more fresh water no new water can be made in the universe or in the earth. Whatever was there, you're already stuck with it. You only have to recycle water. You have to ensure that water doesn't get polluted beyond the point that it can't get recycled economically. So the two drivers really are, can we provide access? And two, can we clean water enough so that the environment doesn't get damaged or we can recycle it? These are the big drivers for startups in water. If you look at where the startup companies are really active in, they're in a variety of areas. You know, they kind of look at how can you provide access to water. So whether it's storage, whether it's bringing water through logistics, whether it's getting distributed access to water, you know, you have water ATMs today. You have startups that actually provide water magically from air today. You'll probably hear from one today. So you have startups that are doing what conventionally piping systems and other transportation systems, so surface water or rivers were doing, provide access to water. A second area is looking at, can you reduce losses during transmission? An earlier speaker said that you have not for revenue water of 60% in India. That's way too high. There's no system can survive. So therefore, can you reduce that to acceptable levels? So again, how do you detect losses? How do you prevent losses? How do you plug these losses and so on, leakages is what startups are helping to do. They bring technology into this. They bring digital technologies and other forms of computational techniques that help in doing all this. A third is purification, whether it's to do with technology or with better systems in real time. So filtration, reverse osmosis, checking purity and quality to different levels of gradation, again, startups are active in. A third area where startups are very active is in looking at gray water. You know, can you recycle gray water at industrial level, at massive scales? Can you do it at individual household levels? Can you have monitoring and metering of gray water levels and leakage into the into the environment? Do you look at green water and blue water, and how do you kind of manage them and monitor them? Sewage treatment plants at various levels in cities. Given the level of urbanization that you're going to have in India, you know, we are about 30% of our people, or 35%, live in urban areas. It's likely to go to 50% and more in the next 2 decades. 75% of our economy will become urban. So the amount of water that will need to get treated in urban areas from industry as well as households is huge. Again, a lot of startups are coming up with a lot of technologies, you know, applying chemical technology, biotech, electromechanical, magnetic, all kinds of science and engineering is being used here. A fourth area is efficiency of use. Can we do real-time monitoring and metering of water usage and supply? Can we have sensors, IoTs? You know, in terms of asset management, there are more than 5,000 dams in India. There are more than 10 million bore wells working in India. Where are these? What levels of quality do they work? How much water are they treating? What structural infirmities are there? There's a lot of data that can be tapped, needs to get tapped and fed into systems, centralized systems for more efficient use. I think a lot of startups are looking at data management and data analytics. You know, looking at groundwater management, river flow management, and a whole host of issues in industrial processes. How do you manage pollution of water bodies, restoration of water bodies? So you can see the variety of activities that startups are doing, all looking at fundamentally arising from two drivers. How do you provide better access to clean water, and how do you prevent environmental damage, you know, from happening as has been happening so far? The last point is for startups to operate, particularly in India, the conditions are not very conducive. And the big problem is that there is no economic value to water as much as it should be accorded to, neither at a policy level, nor at a procedure level, nor in behavior level. The fact that 80% of water is used in agriculture, but it's free, gives no incentive for farmers and other suppliers to make water use more effective. And that's one of the big reasons, despite having the largest arable area in the world, we are not able to get more effective out here. If you look at industry uses about less than 10% of water. And, there's a lot of pressure on them to do that. But even there, unless you have pricing of water, unless you make legal requirements for water to get recycled and pollution to be prevented, the incentives are going to be very less. So in conclusion, let me say that startups cannot create new water. That's physically impossible. They cannot effectively perform on their own if the atmosphere is, if the environment is not conducive for them. So therefore, the policy, environment, the behavioral practices, the pollution norms, and research and development interface between academia and industry, as they get better, then you will have startups starting to flower in multiple areas, helping urban and municipalities in the households and municipalities in the urban sector, industry in better coping up with water, agriculture in making better efficient use of water, and preventing our water bodies from further degradation. And final point for startups and venture capitalists who are really driving this sector of startups. Water sector needs patient capital. It is not conducive for startups like in the internet and other arenas where you have returns coming in 3 or 4 areas. You need patient capital. The opportunity is very large. The atmosphere that we are moving towards, where everybody needs water and regulation will start to lift or move us towards that, means that there'll be more business opportunities, but capital needs to be more patient. We need an atmosphere and policy that's more conducive, and then we'll see startups getting to bloom here. With that, let me end here. Thank you very much.
It's really wonderful of ICCW to have inaugurated and continuing to do this kind of programs. It's indeed wonderful. Now, I'm speaking as an architect and also as the chairman of the Chennai chapter of Indian Green Building Council. It's set up all over India to promote green buildings and sustainable practices. Now, as an architect, when I see this water in buildings, and that too requiring effective management for sustainability, what comes to my mind is we have not even taken the first step. The water practices in large residential colonies, or you take large, except some of these corporate IT companies where they have a specific problem. But if you see large commercial establishments and also the large residential colonies, there is practically no systematic management of water. In fact, this water comes to them as the tail end of the entire infrastructure, built at great expenditure and effort, and the water is delivered at the home for usage. Now, what is our attitude to this? Our attitude is we just don't care for water. We think it's available in abundant measure, inexhaustible, even though we go through cyclic drought and water shortage and so on. So somehow I feel that, being an architect, and I'm not a technologist like the previous speakers, but my focus is on people, how they build, how they use, what they need as buildings and services, and also how they react to facilities, and also look at possible scenarios beyond. Now, one thing I really feel strongly is that our culture of water usage must change. We have the feeling that we have plenty and we can tap and then send water down the drain. It cannot exist anymore. And secondly, the idea for water, is fresh water or clean water being delivered at us at our end point, the use of that water at least has some sense. But unused or wrongly used or overuse of water turning into wastewater instantly without use is absolutely unacceptable. The amount of water that goes unused as a wastewater is tremendous, especially in a lot of areas of buildings. Therefore, I don't like the word wastewater. I'd rather call it wasted water. Now, unlike power, there is no renewable in water unless as a new source. Maybe it's there in the labs. Maybe some startups are doing it, and no matter what you do, it gets polluted by the time it's delivered to the end spot. And with the scenario of COVID haunting us right now, definitely architecture is going to change drastically. The way we work, the way we live will change phenomenally. Even now, several large installations, several large offices and IT companies and all that are rethinking as to what their building should be in future. Therefore, this feeling that water, our attitude to water must change. This needs a lot of education, a lot of training, and a lot of information. Sometimes shocking it should be there. And the next aspect that I would like to touch upon is particularly is a wish list. You know, I mean, given the right to dream, as an architect, if you ask me what is your disruptive wish list, I'll say besides cultural change, I'll suggest a few things. One is precast construction. Why should, we can go to the next slide, please. So why should we construct massive buildings and, you know, all over the country? In fact, they're yet to build, they say, about 60 to 70% of a building needs. And if you're going to do it the conventional way, it's no longer viable. The amount of water that we use in construction is immense, and we cannot afford to waste water like this. Therefore, precast construction as a method in future definitely uses less water and definitely uses less people to work at site. So given all these migration and people problems, this precast technology would require not only reskilling and retooling, but definitely it will give fresh opportunity to people to work. And the surplus migrant labor who have gone back, they could be engaged productively in agriculture or whatever they are doing at the small cottage industry and so on in their villages. So this is a win-win situation if the construction attitudes change. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is you know, some of the mechanical utilities in buildings and some of the technological advances in the fixtures and fittings have made tremendous strides. You have low flow fittings for all kinds of usages, and you have sprinklers which can be scheduled to water the lawn and irrigation based on soil moisture content, so that you don't water when it's not required. And particularly in the area of air conditioning and boilers and all that used in buildings, and also plumbing lines, leak detection. These are all tremendous areas that we have opportunities which are unexplored, available in off the shelf for architects or builders. Next slide, please. Yeah, I just spend a minute on landscaping, because landscaping consumes unaccounted quantity of water. There is no estimate as to how much of water goes into landscaping. Of course, this is more so in the case of some of the luxurious apartments and you know, large hotels and large establishments. But despite the facility that they have to monitor water usage, meter them, and so on, it is hardly being done. And therefore, this landscaping concepts of landscaping itself should change in future. We should go in for native plants, water requiring less water. We should go for xeriscape, which is a dry landscape, and using of less water for all the events, and choosing the climate appropriate and climate tolerant, drought tolerant species. Particularly. See, and the other couple of wish list points are water from atmosphere, using atmosphere as a source of water. Of course, I heard that some startups are working on it. And on the quality side, why can't there be an online testing of both water and the wastewater? I mean, to the extent possible, we don't have to realize that water is being fed in a wrong way and continue to do that. But at least we get some alerts earlier on. And I mean, these are sort of things that, you know, we would look at IIT as a solution provider in future. And lastly, I would say that the culture of last slide, please. I just go to the last slide. Yeah, I mean, I'd skip this. The talk on one before. Yeah. So in terms of management, what I would think immediately apart from whatever I said is smart metering. I think, you know, in the sector, power sector, you can meter the electricity consumed at every outlet point, and you can keep a tab on what is happening where. So why can't we replicate it in this with the waterfront? So we know exactly what the kitchen is heating up too much water, or what is happening. No, laundry or what. In buildings, these in large complexes, this is a substantial quantity. And best management practices. Do we take one step now, or do we jump and take several steps ahead, a big leap? I think time is for big leap, and it requires bold measures, and sometimes with support from legal administrative framework, but we must take this big leap, a big leap in this area. Thank you.
Well, Shripati, you are organizing it so well, and in fact, there is no particular need for me to take over, and so maybe, well, now that you have asked me, may I ask our panelists to be ready with their brief presentation, and Sanskar Godha and Mr. Takano to present their views quickly.
So first of all, good evening from Japan, and Mr. Shripati, thank you for such a good organizing the event, and like I want to thank ICCW. And now I will be translating for Mr. Takano, and little brief about Mr. Takano. He graduated from Kobe University, and he wanted to solve wanted to solve environmental and social problems, and wanted to find sustainable solutions for them, so that society can benefit from them and the businesses can also benefit from them. And so he has been working in the water sector for last 10 years and have developed a very strong network in Japan and in Japanese technology. Okay. はい。今、社長、どうぞ。
はい。DG 高野の紹介と、日本の水問題について説明させていただきます。
So today, Mr. Takano will share about the water problems which are happening in Japan and all over the world, and what are the opportunities and what are the challenges that we face. Right, next slide, please.
次の、はい。
Mr. Shripati.
この100年で世界の水の使用量は2倍以上に増加して、人口も増え続けています。
So the population, the water problem, water use has been doubled in the last century, and the population has grown much more proportionally and much more exponentially compared to the water usage, and the water stress has been increased all over the world in all areas. Yeah, next slide.
バブル90は、節水のノズルです。世界で初めて、無電力で脈動流を起こすことに成功しました。水道水圧だけで脈動流を発生させ、洗浄力を落とさずに水の使用量を最大 95% 削減できます。
So bubble 90 is the first nozzle in the world which doesn't use any electricity, and it says 95% water, and it gives a pulsating flow, so you don't feel like there is less water. And it shoots out the water in a form of machine gun, and it increases the cleaning efficiency of the nozzle, which is not seen in extreme water saving devices other than bubble 90. And yeah.
日本国内のバブル90の導入実績を紹介します。DG 高野が、日本でレストランの市場の、大手レストラン市場の 80% を獲得しています。で、2019年に節約した水量は、インドの、チュンナイ市民の30日間の水の使用量、または大阪市民の、30日間の水の使用量に相当します。
So we have introduced bubble 90 in Japan so far. It has been used in restaurants, supermarkets, wedding halls, and so places. And DG Takano has covered more than 80% market share of the restaurant industry in Japan. And for a fact, in last year, we saved more than 22 million cubic meter of water, which is equivalent to 30 days consumption of Chennai city residents or the Osaka city residents. That's a very big impact we had just in 1 year. どうぞ。
はい。今後のプロジェクトと、解決すべき問題ということで、バブル90は、最大水の使用量を 95% 削減します。日本では、キッチンで、お湯として使うことが多いんですけども、お湯の使用量を削減することで、ガスの使用量も削減することになります。なので、水道だけでなくて、ガスも削減できるので、非常にエコな、蛇口になっております。
So what's our next challenge in future projects? Like first of all, we develop our own faucet, which will have the same impact as the bubble 90. And also, like in Japan, we use hot water, gas for hot water. So if you reduce the hot water consumption, you immediately reduce the gas consumption also. And one more challenge is like usually use detergent for cleaning utensils, but we will be working on oil-resistant coated plates so that you can just wash them using just plain water, and you can save more water, as well as the environmental pollution because of detergent will be less, and the hands will be free from the harmful chemicals. Like, next slide, please.
はい、日本の上下水道インフラの老朽化という問題が新しく出ています。40年前に集中的に整備した下水道が耐用年数を超えて老朽化や腐食が進んでいます。水道管漏水による道路陥没、転落事故も発生、地震による大量の水が噴き出し、道路が洪水状態になったり、下水道管の補修による延命化、そして、雨水、排除能力の増強が進められていますが、費用と人件費が、不足しています。で、ICT を活用した、漏水監視サービスなどの開発が進められています。
So one more problem that Japan is facing now is like the aging infrastructure. So like the pipelines of the sewerage and the water were installed like 40 years ago, and they are deteriorating. And like Japan is also prone to like earthquakes and like road cave-ins, which again lead to water leakages, and like lots of water is lost because of this. And there is a huge problem of like sufficient financial funds and sufficient human resources to repair or renovate this infrastructure. And so like we are working on some leakage monitoring technologies using ICT, so that we can detect these problems and try to correct them with less resources.
Sanskar, you'll have to conclude in 1 minute, okay?
So this was the last slide. So 何か最後のポイントがありますか？
今バブル90は日本国内でしかほとんど売られてないんですけども、世界中の水不足に対応するためにコストを10分の1に抑えた製品を今開発中です。それができ次第インドとか他の水不足の国々に販売したいと思っています。
So right now we are selling just in Japan, but we want to tackle the problem of water crisis all over the world, and we are developing like the 1/10 the price of the nozzle, which will be very useful for all over the world, and anyone can buy it. So we are hoping for this, and like we are hoping to solve the water crisis in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very, very, very illuminating presentation. Lots of opportunities. All the youngsters are hearing, I suppose. There are very many opportunities that are coming. Thank you, Mr. Takano. Thank you, Mr. Gota, for making this presentation. Can we now move on to Pavan Labsetu?
Yeah, thanks, Professor Pradeep. And I'll be speaking on impacts on water quality during COVID-19 crisis and mitigation measures, but I'll also be speaking a bit on post-COVID scenario. So I have referred some of the available literature up to say April 2020, but from say agencies like WHO. So there are good points about COVID-19 as far as water contamination is concerned. There is no study on survival of COVID-19 virus in drinking water or sewage. That's really good. And second is no coronavirus has been detected so far in surface or groundwater, so that the risk to water supply is fairly low because of COVID-19. There is literally no evidence of fecal oral transmission of COVID-19 virus. So that is good for us. There's only one study which highlights cultured COVID-19 from feces. So there are presence detected in feces also. There's some anecdotal evidences, particularly from wastewater, that there's a presence of virus in. There's one study in which it was found out that coronavirus survived for 2 days in dechlorinated tap water and hospital wastewater, which are, I think, emerging as a source of COVID-19 virus, particularly in wastewater. So, okay, what are the remedial measures for COVID-19? But fortunately, as you all are aware, except protozoa, say, fortunately, viruses as well as bacteria are not resistant to chlorine. So there was a study done on a similar morphological virus, influenza virus, and there was a 4-log removal of influenza virus when it got exposed to chlorine only for 5 minutes at a concentration level of 0.3 mg per liter. So it is recommended that we should maintain at least 0.5 mg per liter of chlorine in our water supply, particularly in urban and rural areas both, and that the contact time should be minimum 30 minutes. So CT value, I think, is around 15 mg per liter minute, so which is not fairly high. And it can work, say, up to 8 pH. And there is an advisory which has been issued by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare in Government of India, in which they also detail out how the coronavirus or COVID-19 can be tackled in drinking water. So it's more towards personnel who work in water treatment plants. And I think we need to follow these, and then there are other major exposure routes through which people can get exposed to coronavirus. So we have to really bother much about those exposure routes, and that's all. I'll take only 1.5 minutes to describe what is going to happen in post-COVID scenario, because I got 2-3 calls in last 2 days, and they're asking how should they deal with this particular situation. If you go through, say, Ministry of Drinking Water Sanitation website, they list out on almost 1.46 crore of drinking water sources in entire India, out of which they list out 36,000 arsenic affected, 59,000 nitrate affected, almost 55,000 fluoride affected habitation, and almost 2.5 lakh bacterial contamination in our water. So that still remains a major concern for us. And if you see the scenario, that 20,000 RO-based plant, only 6,000 treatment plants have been established to tackle these issues, but we still worry about sustainability of these particular plant. So if you talk about Bihar or UP, where, say, all this reverse migration is taking place, and that these states are really struggling to strengthen their water quality, particularly in this water quality affected habitations. Take the example of Bihar, where there are almost 30,000 wards to which we have to supply safe water, because they are affected by this fluoride and arsenic. So we really be worried about it. The last point I would like to make is that, see, in cities, in urban cities, we are struggling to maintain water quality due to some emerging contaminants like cyanobacteria. So there was a call from Nagpur Water Supply, which supplies 400 ml water, particularly from a particular source, and then we really need to bother about these particular contamination as far as water quality is concerned. So in addition to bothering about COVID-19, we have to really continue to bother about the already existing water quality issues in India. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Pawan. It was a fantastic presentation. A lot more opportunities, and of course, there are many challenges.
Let me thank ICCW for giving this opportunity to share my thoughts on water challenges during and post COVID-19. I'm going to share my thoughts little particularly on challenges in bottled water industry and how atmospheric water generators or AWGs can provide solution to that, and not during the time of Corona and time ahead. So usually the water supply system in urban areas uses water cans to provide drinking water in houses or hospitals or offices, and same is being practiced during COVID-19. However, the water can supply system involves chances of direct and indirect contacts, and which has with with that the spread of coronaviruses can the chances are very high. And so being this the reason, even though the water demand is there in the urban areas, the water supply system is not able to meet those demand because they are unable to practice the necessary hygiene practice. So what they are right now doing is that they have to depend on locally packaged water supply or the borewell water, and a number of people in the metro cities does not get access to even borewell water, and they don't have personal water purifiers. So they have to rely on the locally generic water cans available to them, or getting raw water and purify at home. So they drink water whichever is available to them regardless of the quality. So just to narrate a case, a scenario about drinking water, more particularly about the packaged water bottles. According to Kerala Packaged Drinking Water Manufacturer Association, approximately before COVID-19 they were supplying around 16 lakh pieces per day. Now the same number has come down to 10 lakh pieces per day. And the main reason behind this is that the supply infrastructure is not working properly, even though the demand is there, even though the demand was the panic demand was there. So now this demand is there, but the water is not being supplied to them. So this kind of scenario is actually has it's leading to an unregulated pricing, and also unregulated groundwater withdrawal, which then is subsequently seeks policies enforcement from the state governments. And this policies enforcement brings another side of the story, where you can only the water is not available in the groundwater much without outside travel or a minimum intervention, right? So to put out a solution, we'll talk about a solution in general which we can have, and then specifically. So in general, we can think about solutions which needs to involve the complete paraphernalia of the surrounding the water. And the first we can have is that we can have to go green with the techniques which are which uses localized recycling of water, or opting rainwater storage system, and etc. And the best thing we can do is that we can learn this thing from 500-year-old Rajasthan model, where the societies in Rajasthan has done best to ensure that localized water storage systems or the sources are actually working in sync with the natural water cycle system. The second solution which we can have is that we can make water solution the whole water solution system more affordable. And to do that, we can minimize unnecessary expenditure toll load which is coming on the water infrastructure system, such that we can avoid transportation of water completely. This does not add value to water, but this is just additional cost. Or the transportation of okay, yeah, just a minute, sir. And the third solution we can have is that we can implement technologies which are designed and specific to the geography and local sources. And just for the drinking water segment, we can have AWGs which are actually the localized source of drinking water, as they don't need any raw water, and also are environment friendly as they don't generate any wastewater. And with this, I'll end my talk.
Very nice. We have now we move on to questions. We have people from across the country joining us and asking questions live.
My question is, what will be the effect on biotas if the dead bodies are disposed in water bodies?
The question is to whom?
what would be the impact of the dead bodies on the
what will be the effect on biotas?
Can we have Ashok Nadarajan addressing this issue?
Madam Geeta, I think the biggest problem would be the decomposition and the thing that would be there, but I'm not too sure what will be the big impact, because we have been having this in the Ganga for a very long time and it still survived. But I do not know what will be the real effect of it, because only in the COVID situation, we have come to know of many things, that if the dead bodies were to be left in an open area, there is a possibility that it can transfer the viruses.
But it's also a question of the amount of water that is there, and now the amount of water used to be so large, and when the water quantity is so less, there may be much larger impact, and that is what one needs to be concerned about.
So this was primarily to understand from the Jal Jeevan perspective, mission perspective. Are we seeing COVID, the pandemic, the lockdown as a reason to delay the overall mission's agenda, or do we see an opportunity in fast tracking it and enabling it to fulfill its mission sooner? I wanted to get a perspective on how Jal Jeevan mission outlook is basis the pandemic and the lockdown. Thank you.
Very nice. Well, obviously the question is directed to Mr. Panda. Can you unmute and then speak?
Yes, to Mr. Panda. Thank you.
Am I audible now?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
You see, the Jal Jeevan mission implementation has already commenced, and it is from 2021. The funds have been even released by the Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation. What we are doing in the task force is to how to operationalize this mandate given to the Jal Jeevan mission to ensure that all the rural households have a functional tap connection. So we are going to, in the task force, work out the modalities, find out the challenges, and work out where the problems lie, and then provide to the government a recommendation report. So the Jal Jeevan mission is already implemented, is now being on the implementation mode. There is no delay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can we have Ankit Nagar now? Are you in a position to answer, Ankit? Ask your question, Ankit.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Go ahead, please.
As you see that there are several commodities that industrial commodities that are linked to a certain water footprint. We talk about water footprints of several commercial detergents, soaps, etc. But this has not been implemented in a widespread manner. So I have a question to what has someone envisioned this for the sustainable water technologies as well, from products to technologies? Is it possible to envision and implement this?
Obviously,
the concept of water footprint.
And this question, and a lot more, time is required. But then let me ask Mr. Raghutama Rao to respond to this thing quickly.
Okay, so you build the cat, really. So Ankit, this is a concept called virtual water. Basically water is embedded in many commodities, in food grains, even natural products, not just industrial commodities. And unless you have an efficient system of measuring the amount of water that's used, going all the way back in the supply chain, and then attributing an economic value to it. And you can measure the quantity, but again, unless you attribute an economic value to it, virtual water has no use. So you have, you're exporting paddy from Punjab, which is a real crime. You're actually exporting water. That's really what you're doing. Or within India, you grow sugarcane in Maharashtra and cotton in some other place. You're really moving water from one place to another. So unless there is policy, unless there's legislation, and unless there's a technology metric, so there's a marrying of legislation, technology, and economics, you're not going to have the concept of virtual water and water credits coming in.
Thank you very much.
I hope, Pradeep, that's okay.
Not many issues to address.
The Anarde Foundation, to whom we belong, we have set up a very large number of water purification plants all over in rural areas, which I'm sure other people would have also. Now, this coronavirus, being the way it is, there is a large possibility of this virus even entering the water or entering the surface, etc. Now, has any thought been given as to what would be the effect, or would there be any effect of this virus entering our drinking water? We are talking about the virus being born, of course, that was covered in the earlier seminars. But can the virus enter our drinking water?
Well, Pawan addressed this particular problem. Can we have Pawan again and then?
Thank you.
Pawan?
Yeah, very relevant question. As per the evidence available till April 2020, as I mentioned, we have not found any evidence of presence of COVID-19 virus in surface or groundwater. But if we consider other similar viruses like COVID-1 virus, it has been detected, and then the survival of COVID-1 virus was ranging from 2 hours to 9 days. So we cannot avoid a situation where the COVID-19 virus can also be present. But the bigger question is that, will it contribute to, say, fecal oral route? Will it also contribute to, say, COVID-19 related diseases? So if we maintain proper hand hygiene, and if we can properly tackle other exposure routes, I think we will probably be better protected. So that's the take about COVID-19 in surface water right now.
Thank you, Pawan. There are very many questions. There are over 80 questions from participants, and we won't be able to answer all of them. Let me now hand over the mic to Shri.
Thank you, Professor. I don't have much time to say more about this
Shripati,
series.
Let's conclude.
Yeah. So I would request Mr. Nandakumar to say a few words and conclude on and with the way forward. Mr. Nandakumar?
Let me just start by saying it's been an intensive 4 weeks that we had of very high quality discussion from speakers and participants from around the world and across domains. It is impossible to summarize in 5 minutes. I'm just going to highlight a few key points as immediate takeaways. The entire proceedings anyway are recorded and accessible from our website. First point, there is an increased demand for water in the wake of COVID-19 for cleaning, disinfection, and sanitation. We need to focus on many ways to reduce, reuse, and recycle water to be sustainable. Several alternatives such as UV, microwave, ultrasound, electrolysis, and even basic devices like water-saving faucets that could save almost 90% of the water without affecting the cleaning quality have been discussed. The second takeaway is that the environmental impact of disinfection process, the need to remove surfactants and other pollutants, and thereby reduce the undesirable effects such as algal blooms and reduce oxygen levels in water bodies. Research is happening in developing detergents with properties that will reduce the load on the environment. A related environment problem is coming from the disposal of masks and other PPEs. If you choose to wash and wear them again, the quantum of water and detergents needed will increase. So there is a need for a balance between cleaning and disinfection efficiency and environmental protection and water conservation. Another dimension is how to break the chain of transmission by social distancing and other guidelines for behavior in public places. We will need to follow new rules in the new normal. There is a need for human capacity building in ensuring minimum contact, but maximizing productivity. This will certainly change our behavior from the time we set out of our house till we return. Equally important is the role of quality of water in cleaning and disinfection. The more the initial load of contamination, dissolved or suspended solids and bacteria, greater will be the use of detergents, and part of the requirement will be consumed by the incoming water quality. Traditionally, we have not paid as much attention to clean water for washing as for clean water for drinking. The per capita consumption of water for washing is several times more than for drinking. So any improvement here will pay back immensely. This is an area that will require further scientific research leading to newer technologies. The impact on urban life will be immediate, but rural India will also catch up soon. So the time to act is now. It is therefore important to ensure that the water used is returned back in the same quality. Already the groundwater is severely contaminated, not only with inorganic, but also with bacteria that have antimicrobial resistance. While fundamental research and its application are needed to rectify the poor groundwater, it is also necessary that future wash uses do not release contaminated water back into the soil. Is there a financial model possible to make this happen? As Professor Bittman pointed out, it is possible to make wastewater generate positive income, but initially CSR and research grants would be required for validation of emerging technologies. Subsequently, corporates and world bodies could fund the scaling up, and any investment will pay back multifold in the form of enhanced health, economic value, quality of life, and overall human well-being. ICCW is taking the next step in the coming weeks through a webinar series on rainwater harvesting. With impending monsoon, the timing is just right. If we can mobilize MNREGA funds, train masons, architects, and plumbers, we could get the ball rolling in constructing a network of rainwater harvesting systems to make India water secure in the years to come. As always, we look forward to your continued participation. Thank you very much.
Dr. Rao, your concluding remarks and word of thanks.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Sripati. And on behalf of International Center for Clean Water under IITM Chennai, we would like to thank one and all the speakers, especially the overseas speakers, which the time difference is very high, though they participated very well. Speakers, panelists, all the participants. I can say there are almost like 600 participants at an average for all the individual seminars. So we would like to thank one and all for all your support for this seminar series. A special thanks are to Padmasri T Pradeep, Institute Professor, and also E Nandakumar, CEO ICCW, for their continuous encouragement for doing these seminars. And last but not least, I would like to thank Dr. Ramya, Sripati, and also all IITM team for their continuously supporting and encouraging all these seminars. One and all, I would like to thank everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.